Your liabilities and your contractual obligations are clean. Company that I was responsible for the turnaround on a number of years ago, we moved it to acquisition. We got it cleaned up, and we found an acquirer. But previous management had been very sloppy in the way that they'd done their intellectual property and their contractual the contracts that they'd written with their contract developers over the years. Long story short, I found myself over the period of 2 weeks trying to contact over 50 different developers that had scattered across the globe, getting them to sign a piece of paper that evidenced the fact that any intellectual property that they had developed while they were on contract to this company was in fact the property of the company in exchange for $1. I mean, that was an exercise that was, those are 2 weeks of my life I'll never get back. But in the event, or in the end, it was successful, but it might not have been. And although it might not have scuttled the eventual acquisition, it certainly would have impacted the amount of money that acquiring company was prepared to pay for the company in question, because of the risk attached that somebody was going to pop out of the woodwork and return from Thailand one day and claim that the key aspect of that company was something that they had in fact invented and it belonged to them. And finally, be careful with valuation. Now, this is a point that it's unfortunate that Gary wasn't able to join us this morning, but this is a point that tends to be something in support of what the venture capitalists make quite often. It's easy to fall into the trap as an early stage entrepreneur that your company has immense value, and again, as you've moved along that staircase of valuation over time and investment, it's jumped up in valuation as you've gone along. And in particular, in Alberta, we have a problem where we have, at the angel level, we have, as it relates to technology or biotech types of opportunities, a largely uneducated source of funds, right? So what tends to happen more often than not is you get exaggerated valuations too early in a company's life. Now, that seems like a great day for an early stage entrepreneur at the time, because what that means is that for the next round of money, given that they've valued your company at a higher level, or let's say an exaggerated level over what the market might value it, that means for the money they're investing, they get a smaller piece of your company and you get to keep more of it. That's all well and good until the day comes that you have to pay the piper, and somebody that doesn't have those same interests, i.e. the acquiring company, comes to the table and says, you know what, based on my beliefs, here's what that company is, based on market data, here's what I believe that company should be worth. And if you find yourself at that point in time with a company that's valued by the market at some number less than rounds that have been done in previous financings, that's a big problem. And in fact, it makes it very difficult sometimes to actually get consent for an acquisition at that point in time. So what you want to do is you want to be as careful as you can to make sure that the valuation that you're receiving in financings as you go over the course of your corporate history are as practical and as market-based as possible, so that you don't end up with that hangover later. As I say here, pain accrues compound interest. By deferring the pain of the actual valuation of your company, over time it gets worse and creates a larger and larger problem. So dilution is a red herring. Okay. The objective, though, ultimately, after all of this, the swing thought I would want to leave you with is the fact that the acquiring company ultimately is going to have the same interest that you would in terms of building a going concern, and that is that you built a good company. The suggestions I've made in terms of orienting your company toward the appetites of the potential acquirers out there, in effect, what you're doing is you're looking for opportunity and exploiting holes in the market that aren't there already. That's good practice, even if you're building a going concern. Okay? If you're building a company with clean IP and clean books and clean contractual obligations, that's good practice, and you built a good company anyway. So there's nothing that I've described here that is necessarily outside the realm or the scope of being a good manager of your early stage entity. It's just something that is of particular interest when you get to the last chapter in the story and you want to sell it to somebody. I won't spend a lot of time on the commercial for what we do and what we're all about. Kirchner Private Capital Group, very briefly, is a 25-year-old boutique firm that started off in helping with turnarounds and workouts for struggling companies. And over time, we've built a very, very strong practice in the M&A field in selling small and medium-sized companies to larger ones. We typically do somewhere in the order of 15 to 20 transactions a year. And we look at companies, we sell companies that are under $100 million in enterprise value. Typically, most commonly, the 2 sigma underneath that bell curve tends to be around the $20 to $50 million range. That's where most of our business tends to be. In addition to that, we have at the top bubble here, the third part of our company today is we have an asset management business where through, again, secondary transactions, we've bought in and become the general partner or the managing partner in a series of venture funds ourselves and are working those portfolios that tend to be at the end of their life through to successful conclusion at the tail end when the original limited partnerships may have struggled with that. Myself, I am the managing partner in charge of the traditional business, the turnarounds, workouts, diagnostic assessments, and that sort of thing. That's my email address. If anyone has any questions that can't be answered here very briefly before I got to hopefully make it to the airport, then by all means email me with them. I'd be happy to respond at any time. So that's the prepared remarks.